She said we should keep it simple and just be acquaintances. And she said it like she was ordering a different drink. Calm and polite, like the last 3 years were a receipt she could fold and put in her pocket. We were sitting at the small kitchen table in the apartment we once picked together. Warm light from the stove hood making her face look softer than her words, and I could see the little tremor in her knee under the table, the tapping that always showed up when she wanted control but could not quite grab it. She wanted me to react. She wanted a speech. She wanted proof that she mattered. And instead, I looked at her and let the silence do the talking until she filled it with the same set of lines people rehearse when they already have a new plan. She said she needed space. She said she needed to find herself. She said I was intense, and she said she still cared, not in that way. And her fingers reached for my hand like they were trying to press a reset button. The old, soothing touch, the little circles on my skin, and it used to work on me. It used to make me forget the hard parts. But that night it felt like she was trying to calm her own guilt. I slid my hand away and said, "Okay," I said, "I understand. No hard feelings." And I watched her eyes flicker as if she had missed a step in a dance she thought she knew by heart. Her mouth opened and then closed. Then she tried again. She said, "I expected you to fight for us." And I almost laughed because it sounded like she wanted a movie scene more than a real conversation. I shrugged and asked what there was to fight for if she already decided. She set her glass down too hard and the clink echoed. She stared at me like I had stolen her spotlight. She said I thought what we had meant more to you, and I answered that it did mean a lot. But I would not beg someone to stay who wanted to leave. The room went quiet. The refrigerator hum became the loudest thing in our life together, and she stood up suddenly, chair scraping, as if sound could replace the reaction she was not getting. She said, "I guess that is it then." I nodded and said, "I guess so." She hovered by the door waiting for me to chase her with desperation. And when I did not, she grabbed her bag and said she would message me. I said, "Take care." The door clicked shut, and for a long moment I just sat there. The smell of the pasta I cooked still hanging in the air, garlic and pepper and the herbs she used to say made the place feel like home, and I wondered if she planned her exit before or after the second helping. Then I stood up, cleared the plates, washed the pan, and ordered street food from a late-night place because I was hungry and my life was not over. It was only changing shape. 3 days later, her first message arrived. "Hey, can we talk?" I waited until my lunch break was over and then replied, "Sure, what is up?" The typing bubble appeared fast, paused, vanished, then came back. She wrote, "I miss you. It feels strange." I stared at the screen and felt nothing dramatic. No burning, no panic. Just the quiet understanding that she wanted a certain version of me. The version that would answer, "I miss you too." I replied, "Breakups are strange. Hope you are settling in." Her answer came instantly. "Are you okay?" Really okay? I could almost hear the irritation in the words. She needed me to be wrecked. She needed her decision to look powerful. I replied, "I am fine. I went for a long walk yesterday. The weather was good. The bubble appeared again for a long time." Then she wrote, "Oh, good." 2 weeks later, she called at 1:26 in the morning. I let it ring out. In the morning, I listened to the voicemail while making eggs. Her voice was thick, music in the background, a glass clinking. She sounded like someone trying to punish me for not playing my part. She said we would stay on good terms. Good terms means you pick up. I did not argue. I texted around noon, saw I missed your call. "Everything all right?" She answered within minutes. "No, I had a fight with Orion. I needed someone to talk to." Orion was the coworker she mentioned too often. The one she insisted was just a friend. The one whose name had started showing up on her screen late at night. I replied that sucks, hope you two work it out. The typing bubble popped, disappeared. Then she wrote, "Are you serious? That is all you have?" I waited an hour and then asked, "What do you want me to say?" She wrote, "Maybe act like you care, like we mattered." I set the phone down, finished coffee, then checked again. 3 more messages sat there. "You are really ignoring me now. This is not what friends do." "Fine, I see how it is. I did not reply. A month after the breakup, she asked for help moving. My lease ends this weekend. Could use another set of hands on Saturday. I read it twice. The audacity did make me smile. I replied, cannot busy. She replied, busy with what? I answered with stuff. She went silent for hours. Then late that night, she wrote, most people would at least make up a real excuse. Most exes would not ask their ex to carry boxes into a new place with the person they replaced them with. I typed back, you said we were better as acquaintances. Acquaintances do not move furniture together. The bubble appeared, stopped, started. Then she wrote, I thought we were better than this. I asked better than what? She wrote better than acting like strangers, like none of it mattered. I waited and then replied, we are not strangers. You chose the new label, you can live with it. After that, her messages slowed, check-ins that felt like tests. How are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? I answered politely. Vague, never giving her a handle to pull. Meanwhile, my own days filled in quietly. I joined a small climbing gym. I started cooking for myself without the expectation that a thank you would come back. I cleaned out the closet and donated the clothes I kept only because she liked them. I went to my sister's place and played board games with my nephews. I took a weekend trip to a seaside town and watched the sunrise without anyone telling me I was too serious. And the strange part was that the more I lived my life, the more she started circling back. One night she wrote, I cannot do this. You are so cold now. It is like you became a different person. I looked at the screen and felt the temptation to explain, to defend, to soften. And then I wrote, I am the same. You are just seeing me from farther away, she replied. What does that mean? I wrote it means you do not get the same access anymore. You asked for distance, so you got it. She did not answer, but I knew her patterns. Silence was never peace. It was planning. The first time she truly snapped was over a forgotten date. Her message arrived early. You did not even say happy birthday. And it hit me that I did not know it was her birthday. My calendar had stopped being built around her weeks ago. I waited until the evening and replied, oh, wow, is it today? Happy birthday, she replied immediately. You never forgot before, I replied, sorry, been busy? Then after a pause, she wrote, Orion forgot too. I spent the day alone. There it was, the real reason she was upset. Not my message, but the gap between what she imagined and what she had. I did not respond. The calls started in waves after that. First late-night calls, then midday calls, then the kind of ringing that meant she decided it was an emergency. One night, my phone buzzed at 3:04. I silenced it and went back to sleep. In the morning, I had 16 missed calls and one text. I needed you last night. I made coffee, let the sun warm the kitchen, and replied everything, Kay. She wrote, no, Orion and I ended it. I was a mess, and you could not answer your phone. I took a sip and replied, that is rough. You should call a friend. She answered, I was calling a friend. I replied, I was asleep. And then I added, try talking to someone professional if you feel unsafe. She replied with a string of angry words. And then nothing. A few days later, she showed up at my building. I opened the door and saw her standing there, mascara smeared, hair pulled back in a careless knot. She smelled like cigarettes and the sweet vanilla spray she used when she wanted attention. She said, you are ignoring me. I leaned on the frame and said, I have been answering your messages. She said, you know what I mean. Her hands curled into fists. She looked past my shoulder as if expecting to see our old life still arranged inside. The framed photos, the coat she left behind, the extra toothbrush. But the hallway was plain. The place looked like mine now. She swallowed and said, this is not how people act when they care. I nodded and said, you asked for a different relationship. This is what it looks like. She scoffed and called me a robot. And I said, since you decided I was not your partner, you do not get partner behavior. Her face shifted, anger folding into confusion. She said, you were supposed to, and I asked supposed to what? She hesitated, and the truth slipped out of her like air from a punctured tire. She said, "Wait, keep the door open. Be there if things did not work out." She did not say it directly, but she did not have to. The silence between us said it for her. I looked at her and felt no thrill of revenge, no satisfaction, only a calm distance. I told her she should go. She looked like she might argue. Then her shoulders dropped. She stepped back, and I closed the door gently. A week later, she sent a message from a new number. "Maybe we can try again." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "No, you were right at the start. Keep it simple," and I blocked the number. The next months were quiet in the way I never knew quiet could be. I got a promotion at work because my brain was not busy trying to decode someone else. I started running in the mornings. I made friends with a neighbor who played guitar and taught me a few chords. I learned to say no without guilt, and that new skill felt like armor. Then 6 months after the breakup, I saw her in a bookstore cafe. She sat alone near the window, staring into a half-cold drink, a paperback open but unread, her hair darker, her face tired, and for a second I felt the old instinct to comfort, the old habit of thinking her feelings were my assignment. But I let it pass. I ordered my coffee, waited at the counter, and when she noticed me, her eyes widened, hope and panic crossing her face in quick turns. She opened her mouth as if to call my name. I gave a polite nod, the kind you give a casual acquaintance, and I walked out without turning back. Later, mutual friends tried to feed me updates. "She asks about you. She's not doing great. The guy she dated after you was rough. She says you changed." I did not engage. I did not correct them. I did not ask for details. It was not my business. A year after the night at the kitchen table, my phone lit up with a follower request on a social app. It was her. New photo, tired eyes. I dismissed it. Later, a message request arrived. "Congratulations on your new role. I knew you would get there." I deleted it without opening. The last time I heard her name was at a holiday gathering when an old colleague mentioned she was dating someone in finance now, and then added almost casually that she still brings you up sometimes. Says you were the one that got away. I laughed into my drink and thought, no, I did not go anywhere. She walked out, and then I went forward. The party grew louder, the music covered the moment, and she faded back into a story I used to live inside. One evening not long after, the doorbell rang while I was making dinner. I looked through the peephole and saw a courier holding flowers, roses. I did not open. I let the bell stop on its own. Later, my phone buzzed from an unknown number. "Did you get them?" I blocked it. The flowers sat outside all night. By morning, they wilted, and on my way to work, I tossed them in the dumpster without hesitation. I realized I had stopped counting days a while ago, stopped wondering if she would reach out, stopped translating every silence into a sign. The biggest surprise was not that she kept trying. It was that each attempt landed softer until it landed on nothing at all. I used to think the opposite of love was hate, but it is not. The opposite of love is peace. And when you finally have it, you protect it like a home. I kept living, I kept cooking, I kept showing up for people who showed up for me. And the version of me she missed was not dead. He was simply not available anymore. Because he learned a basic rule. If someone asks for less, you give them less, and you do it calmly. You do it without a speech. You do it without cruelty. You just follow the terms they set, and you walk away with your energy intact. And one day you look up and realize the revenge you thought you wanted was never revenge at all. It was freedom, and it finally arrived. Weeks turned into a year, and the seasons gave me new markers. The first spring without waiting for her opinion on my weekend plans. The first summer where I did not check my phone at the beach. The first autumn where I bought a jacket because I liked it, not because it matched her taste. And the first winter where I spent a quiet evening reading while snow tapped the window and nobody accused me of being boring. I learned that healing is not a loud process. It is a slow rearranging of priorities. It is waking up and not feeling the need to prove you are worthy. It is choosing yourself without needing an audience. And with that choice came a clarity that I had avoided for too long. The truth was that our last year together had been a series of small demotions already. I had been downgraded to a convenience, a driver, a listener, a problem solver, and I accepted it because I confused effort with love. I used to think that if I could carry enough weight, then she would feel safe and stay. But what she wanted was the thrill of being chased, the power of deciding the temperature of every room, the comfort of knowing I would always rearrange myself around her moods. And when she said acquaintances, she expected a leash that looked polite. She expected me to keep the emotional door unlocked. She expected me to be reachable in the hours when her choices hurt her and she needed pain relief. But boundaries are not revenge. They are simply the shape of self-respect. And once I stopped negotiating my own dignity, the story changed. There was a day at work when a new teammate asked how I stayed so calm under pressure, and I almost told him the truth. That calm is what happens when you stop carrying problems that are not yours. That calm is what happens when you stop trying to earn love from someone who treats it like a bargaining chip. Instead, I smiled and said, "You learn over time." Later that week, I met a woman named Sienna at the climbing gym. She was laughing with chalk on her hands, and she asked if I wanted to try a route with her. I said sure, and we spent the next hour failing and cheering and trying again. It was simple and honest. We went for smoothies after. We talked about books and travel and weird childhood hobbies. And when she asked about my last relationship, I did not vent. I did not rant. I said it ended, and I learned some things, and she nodded like that was enough. That conversation alone felt like breathing cleaner air. Months later, she became someone I trusted, not because she demanded it, but because she was consistent. She did not punish me for needing rest. She did not test me with silence. She did not ask me to read her mind. She said what she meant, and meant what she said, and it made me realize how exhausting the old pattern had been. One night I was cooking at her place, and I dropped a spoon and it clattered, and I flinched out of old habit, expecting criticism, expecting an eye roll, expecting the small contempt that used to hide in jokes. But Sienna just laughed and picked it up and asked if I wanted help, and my chest loosened in a way I did not know it could. Peace is not only the absence of conflict, it is the presence of safety, and safety changes you. It makes you kinder. It makes you slower to react. It makes you willing to be imperfect. And that was when I understood why my ex kept accusing me of being cold, because she could no longer push the old buttons. She could no longer turn my emotions into proof of her importance. The more stable my life became, the more her messages shifted from longing to resentment, like she was angry that I did not collapse on schedule. At first, she tried sweetness. She sent a late-night note that said she dreamed about me. I did not answer. Then she tried guilt. She wrote, "I guess I meant nothing. I did not answer." Then she tried nostalgia. She sent a photo of a restaurant we used to love. I did not answer. Then she tried a crisis. She wrote, "I am at the hospital." I waited and then replied, "Are you safe?" She replied, "Yes, just a panic attack." I replied, "Please talk to a doctor and a counselor." She replied, "You used to be the only one who could calm me." And I replied, "I am not available for that role." After that, she went quiet for a month, and I thought maybe she finally accepted it. Then on a Friday afternoon, she emailed my work address. She wrote a long message about memories and regret, and how she was different now. I read it once, felt a mild sadness for the younger version of me who would have rushed back. Then I archived it, because the words were not new. The pattern was, she always came back when her current life disappointed her. She always remembered my value when she needed a cushion. And once you see that pattern clearly, it becomes impossible to unsee. There was a point where even my friends noticed. They said she still tries to pull you into her orbit. And I said, that is her habit, not my responsibility. My friend Thomas asked if I hated her, and I said no. Hate would mean she still owned space in my head. I do not hate her. I just do not participate. One day I ran into her brother at a supermarket. He recognized me and tried to be friendly. He asked how I was doing. I said I was well. He hesitated and said, "She talks about you a lot." I nodded, paid for my groceries, and left. Later that night, I realized something else. I had stopped trying to explain my side of the story to anyone, because I did not need approval anymore. I did not need to win the narrative. I only needed to live a life that felt honest. The final attempt came in the most theatrical way. A mutual friend invited several people to a small gathering. I arrived with Sienna. and the room was warm and loud, and then my ex walked in. She froze when she saw me. Then her face arranged itself into a smile that did not reach her eyes. She walked over as if we were old pals. She greeted Sienna with exaggerated politeness, then turned to me and asked if we could talk for a minute. I said no, not here, and I went back to the conversation I was having. She stood there stunned, like a magician whose trick failed. Later, she cornered me by the coat rack. She whispered that I was humiliating her. I looked at her and said, "You are doing that to yourself." And then I said something I had never said before. I said, "I hope you find what you are looking for, but you will not find it through me." Her eyes flashed. She tried to accuse me of being cruel, and I said no. I am being clear, and clarity is the kindest thing I can offer. She left early, and the room exhaled. Tomas patted my shoulder and said, "You handled that well." And I realized he was right, not because I stayed calm for appearance, but because I truly did not feel pulled. That night on the drive home, Sienna asked if I was okay. I said yes, and I meant it. I told her I used to confuse intensity with love, and I used to think I had to earn a place in someone's life by suffering. She squeezed my hand and said, "You do not." And that simple sentence landed deeper than any dramatic apology ever could. Time passed, not in leaps, but in normal days. Grocery lists, laundry, jokes in the kitchen, weekend hikes, concerts with friends, little projects like painting a shelf. And in those normal days, my ex became less of a character and more of a lesson. I learned to recognize manipulation when it wore a soft voice. I learned that someone can cry and still be wrong. I learned that guilt is not the same as responsibility, and I learned that being available is not the same as being valued. There was a morning when my phone buzzed with another unknown number, a message that said, "I am sorry for everything. Can we at least talk like adults?" And I stared at it for a minute, and I felt a small compassion, not for the chaos she brought, but for the emptiness that always seemed to follow her. And still I did not respond, because compassion does not require access. Compassion can exist at a distance. I deleted the message and went for my run. The air was cold and clean. My breath made little clouds, and the rhythm of my feet on pavement felt like proof that I was moving forward. Later that day, I remembered something from the breakup night, the way she tapped her foot, the way she watched my face for a reaction, the way she tried to squeeze my hand like a handle, and I realized she had never been angry that I stopped loving her. She was angry that I stopped being controllable. There is a difference. Love is mutual. Control is one-sided. And when control breaks, it feels like loss to the one who relied on it. But it feels like life to the one who escaped it. Years later, if someone asked me what happened, I would not tell them a story about revenge. I would tell them a story about choosing peace, about respecting a decision even when it hurts, about not trading dignity for temporary comfort, and about the quiet victory of waking up and not feeling owned. Because that is the thing nobody warns you about. Once you are free, you start noticing how many people live on hooks, waiting for permission to be okay. And once you see that, you start cutting hooks gently, not out of anger, but out of love for your future. One evening, I was washing dishes and Sienna was reading on the couch, and my phone stayed silent. No unknown numbers, no late-night calls, no drama, just silence. And I realized that silence used to scare me. Silence used to mean abandonment, but now silence meant stability. It meant my boundaries were holding. It meant the life I built was not fragile. And in that moment, I understood the best ending I could ever write for myself. Not a reunion, not an apology, not a final argument, but a calm room, a steady heart, and the knowledge that someone else's feelings were no longer my job. And if she ever tells people that I changed, she is right. I changed in the only way that matters. I stopped negotiating with chaos. I stopped performing pain to make someone feel significant. I stopped being a backup plan. I became the main character of my own quiet days. And that is why when the past knocks now, I do not answer. Not because I am cold, but because I am finally warm in a place it cannot reach. The funny part is that I did not become numb. I became selective. I still cared deeply. I just cared in the right directions. I cared when my mother called with a worry in her voice. I cared when Tomas lost his job and needed a place to crash for a few nights. I cared when a younger coworker asked for advice. I cared when Sienna had a bad day and asked for a quiet walk. And I noticed that real care never demanded payment. It did not come with conditions and tests and traps. Real care was steady. It did not explode if you missed a call. It did not punish you for being tired. It did not accuse you of being cruel when you said no. And once you experience that, you start seeing how fake care looks when it is actually control dressed up as affection. Sometimes I still remember small details from the old life. The way she used to hum while brushing her hair. The way she laughed at a certain joke. The way she always wanted the window seat, and those memories do not hurt anymore. They just exist like old postcards. Proof that a chapter happened, not proof that it should return. A therapist once told me that closure is not a conversation. It is a decision. And that line stayed with me because I used to think I needed her to understand. I used to think I needed her to admit what she did. I used to think I needed a perfect final message that would make her stop. But closure came the day I stopped expecting fairness from someone who used feelings as a weapon. Closure came the day I accepted that she might never take responsibility, and I could still move on, and moving on did not mean pretending nothing mattered. It meant letting what mattered stay in the past without dragging it into the present. There was a time when I feared being seen as the bad guy, because she was good at telling stories where she was the victim. She could make any boundary sound like cruelty. She could make any consequence sound like punishment. But then I realized something simple. The people who know you do not need convincing, and the people who need convincing do not know you. So I stopped arguing for my character. I just lived it. Over time, the rumors faded. Mutual friends stopped bringing her up, not because she disappeared, but because I stopped giving her a place in the conversation. That is another boundary people forget. You can set boundaries in your own mind. You can refuse to rehearse an old drama even when others invite you to. You can say, "I hope she is okay," and then change the subject. And if someone insists, you can say, "I am not the right person to talk about her." And that is that. Eventually, even the most persistent messenger learns that you are not a stage. Years later, on a random afternoon, I was walking through a park and I saw a woman sitting on a bench feeding birds. And for a split second, I thought it was her. The same posture, the same hair color. My body tensed out of habit. Then the woman turned, and it was a stranger, and I laughed at myself, not because it was funny, but because it was proof of how deep patterns go. Our bodies remember what our minds outgrow. But the difference is that now I notice and I breathe and I keep walking. I do not chase the old story. I do not open the door to check if it is safe. I already built a safer place. And sometimes people ask how I did it. How I went from being the guy who would answer every call to the guy who can ignore a ring and sleep. And I tell them the truth. I did not become hard. I became honest. I stopped acting like access is love. I stopped measuring loyalty by how much I can tolerate. I started measuring love by how it treats my peace. And if love demands you abandon yourself, then it is not love. It is a transaction. And I am not for sale. There is a last detail I never tell people. The night after I blocked her final number, I did not feel triumphant. I felt quiet, and the quiet scared me for a moment, because I had lived in noise for so long. But then I made a simple dinner. I ate slowly, I cleaned up, and I went to bed, and I slept through the night. No midnight buzzing, no anxious checking, no arguments in my head, just sleep. And in the morning I woke up and the light looked different. Not brighter, just clearer. Like someone cleaned a window. I forgot was dirty. That is the moment I knew the relationship was truly over. Not when she walked out, not when she cried, not when she asked to try again, but when my body stopped waiting, when my mind stopped scanning for her mood, when my day belonged to me. And if there is any lesson in my story, it is this. When someone says they want less from you, believe them. Do not bargain. Do not chase. Do not audition for a role you never asked for. Accept the terms, step back, and then put your energy into the people and places that return it. Because the greatest flex is not winning an argument. It is building a life that does not require one. And yes, sometimes she probably tells it differently. Maybe she says I turned cold overnight. Maybe she says I punished her. Maybe she says I was prideful. But none of those versions change my reality because I know what happened. I was asked to shrink and I refused. I was offered a downgrade and I accepted it exactly as written. I was told to be casual and I became casual. And the shock on her face was never about love. It was about losing a lever. If you are listening to this and you are in a similar place, remember this. You do not owe anyone your best self after they return your heart. You can be polite without being available. You can be kind without being on call. You can wish them well without reopening the door, and when the guilt tries to crawl back in, ask yourself one question. If roles were reversed, would they protect your peace the way you are protecting theirs? If the answer is no, then keep walking, keep living, keep building, because peace is not empty. It is full of everything you finally have room for. That is the end of it. No dramatic finale, no last embrace, no perfect speech, just a quiet choice repeated until it becomes your new normal. And the moment it becomes normal, you realize you are not losing anything worth keeping. You are gaining time, focus, sleep, laughter, and a future that is not built on fear, and that future is the only response that matters. If a message shows up tomorrow from a new number, if flowers appear again, if an apology arrives wrapped in nostalgia, I will do what I do now. I will breathe. I will smile at the life I built, and I will let the past stay in the past. Because peace is not something you find once, it is something you choose every day. And that is why the greatest revenge is not anger. It is the day you forget to check the door for someone who once owned all your attention. It is the day your heart stops waiting and you finally feel light. Then you smile and you move on.